peak and off-peak are getting flattened out dramatically. So what does it mean? So I've taken right here a look at, this is PG&E's commercial A6 tariff. This is their current A6 tariff. And that orange little, wonderful little thing there on the top, that line is a typical solar PV production profile in the middle of a summer afternoon. And you can see, if you look at that green block up there, in the peak period, you're, as a commercial customer, getting 55 cents a kilowatt hour for the energy that you're generating, and much of that curve, that PV production, is under that. What's happening, and what has just been negotiated at the CPUC, this has not yet been actually accepted by them, but it's been negotiated by the solar partners in PG&E's 2017 general rate case, is this. So you can imagine that's a huge change. Your value of solar is based on what those time of use costs are, as well as where they're placed. So I think this is so dramatic. I'm just going to go back so you can see that again. That results in a loss of 25 to 45% of the value of your installed solar system or your future solar system. So this has been a really big argument that's going on right now at the CPUC, and this is where it's going. The negotiation right now for commercial customers is there's a 10-year grandfathering of your time of use periods, and there's a 3-4 year phase-in of these changes of the time of use rates. In residential, actually I'll get to this in a second here, residential 5-year grandfathering with a 2-year phase-in of the time of use periods. Commercial is 10 years. And again, you'll hear about this time of use grandfathering. A lot of people think that, oh, if I'm grandfathered, let's say I'm a commercial customer, and I'm grandfathered for 10 years, then gee, my solar PV system value is going to remain fine over 10 years. It's not, because they only grandfathered the time of use periods. They didn't grandfather the rates, that 55 cents a kilowatt hour that you get.
Excuse me, Tom?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I can hear myself really well. You guys let me know if you can. Okay, so implementation time frame. When is all this stuff going to come down? Well, in PG&E territory, it's going to become mandatory for commercial customers and pretty much residential in the 2020-2021 timeframe. SE territory, we're right in the middle of the negotiations with them. They're actually targeted before this. That's not going to happen, but they're looking in the 2019 timeframe. And SDG&E down in San Diego, they're already there. So they've already changed over to these new time of use rates. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but when I see less risk, I get really excited. And so what's happened is, by changing these time of use rates and the periods, the incentives that were built into the tariffs for solar customers have come out. A lot of them have come out. And that means that the risk that you have for a long-term investment on a solar project, these solar projects are 20, 30-year projects. And so over that time period, there's a lot of risk if there's a lot of incentive built into the tariffs. They're yanking a lot of that incentive out, so the risk has gone down. That's good. Most people actually weren't talking about or thinking about the risks of these projects over time. Everybody just thought the tariffs would be good forever. At Sage, we've been modeling this stuff for years and talking about the risk and how that's going to come out. It's now coming out. Of course, the bad side is that your returns are a heck of a lot less than they used to be from these things. So in, for instance, SCE territory, what we're going to see is that many commercial projects are just not going to pencil for a few years until the price of energy and storage comes down enough to they begin penciling again. In PG&E territory, we're seeing a loss of solar energy value for these projects of 10 to 40%. That's big. Okay, and that's anyway. Incentives. So I'm going to go through this really quick. Solar installers incentives, they're coming out of the market. So basically what happens is we have these policy objectives to implement green, renewable energy stuff, solar, storage, And as those policy objectives are achieved, the incentives come out over time. And so we're seeing that. And what's happening here at the federal level, a really big driver of these projects that were mentioned earlier is the federal investment tax credit, the ITC. 30% of your installed cost gets returned to you in tax benefits first year. That's major, that's huge. But it's going to be stepping down starting in 2020, it goes down to 26 and then 22%, and then the year after that falls off the cliff to 10%. It'll probably stay there for basically ever. But that's going to be a big change in the way commercially financed projects are financed and what they're valued. SGIP incentives for, this is for battery storage primarily. It also applies to wind projects and stuff, but really battery storage is what we've been thinking about here. We're in step 2 or step 3 for residential, step 2 for commercial and PG&E territory. Just a quick note about that. We're at Sage, we're super bullish on storage. It has to happen. It's what's going to come into the grid, onto the grid, and allow us to address those peaks that happen before and after solar is in place. But what's going to happen is it's not going to happen until the cost of solar plus storage is competitive with conventional energy. So those peaker plants that come online to get that peak at the end of the day, when that combination of storage and solar gets less than that, it'll start displacing those. And we think that's in the 5 to 10 year time frame. So we're actually modeling that down now with our customers, and that's going to impact the way these tariffs look in the future. Anyway, right now, SGIP incentives, this is kind of the second round of SGIP. These things are not going to last forever. We expect another 3 or 4 years of them. MCE, you heard JR talk about a lot of the great programs that they have for implementing and pushing that forward. Their deep green, billing, a couple of things that he didn't mention is the NEM bill credit at the end of the year. You can cash out a fair amount of money, which if you have a bill credit and you're a PG&E customer at the end of the year, they say thank you very much, and you just get rid of that to them. In PG&E territory, very few incentives left. They've got this option R, the renewable option tariffs for both E19 and E20, which are commercial scale. That's kind of it. So they're pretty much out of the game. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is regulatory stuff. And I had to put that big splash there because regulatory action is really slow. And so we're starting out in the legislative season right now in Sacramento. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening at the California Public Utilities Commission, because what happens is the regulations start in Sacramento, they get pushed over the CPUC. The CPUC then works out with the utilities and various different interested parties how these things are going to get implemented. What's happening in the CPUC right now is we've got net energy metering 3.0 coming up. We're going to really start digging into that next year. We're on net energy metering 2.0 right now, and that actually pulled down the value of solar a little bit. This is going to pull it down more, conceivably a fair amount more. So we don't know where it's going to end up. If I had to guess today, I think it would end up looking like a feed-in tariff program similar to what MCE has on offer, but not with nearly as much value. Let's see. The IDER proceeding is, that's where they're trying to figure out how to integrate distributed energy, and a lot of that is working on what's going on with storage. So right now, there aren't any tariffs that really push storage forward. And you've got this problem where if you create a tariff for solar PV, it actually doesn't work very well for storage. And if you create a tariff for storage, it doesn't work very well for solar. There are ways around that, but that has not come to fruition yet. That's what's being discussed, one of the things that's being discussed there. And lastly, that time of use, this radical change that's happened, PG&E, for instance, has never changed their time of use periods until now. And it was such a shock that there was an agreement that said, we're not going to change time of use periods going forward any more than once every 5 years. It actually turns out to be once every 6 years because that's how the rate case is done. Okay, legislature, I'm not going to go through it. There's like 60-some bills out there that we're tracking that affect this. A lot of them are really focused at Z&E and the Title 24 stuff that's coming up, and support for EV infrastructure. There's a lot of that going on. That's really hot. And federal, you guys kind of know what's going on there. Oil and gas is in, and renewables are not so much. So we've got tariffs on solar cells, steel and aluminum. All of those things are impacting the renewables industry. So that solar cell, the panel tariff adds about 6% to the cost of a commercial project right now. The steel and aluminum tariffs add roughly 1, maybe 2% to the cost is what we're seeing. Not real big, but we don't expect anything to happen positive at all, I think, at the federal government level through the midterms. I'm not sure they're going to get any legislation through, but we don't expect anything to happen positive unless there's a change out of the central or the Congress. Okay, that's it for reality.
Robert, to come up and just take a couple of questions and give some mic here. Questions for our renewable gurus. Let's scoot these up. Questions? Go ahead.
For Robert, so Sonoma Academy, very exciting. That's a school, correct?
It is.
Yeah. I guess this is more making a point than a question. The Living Building Challenge, one of the key differences with LEED is that it's the operation of the building, not just, so they monitor it every year. I don't know if you want to say more about that. It's not just, okay, you get your LEED stamp and that's it.
Yeah, it's based on actual performance, right? So that's the key thing. That's been the challenge with a lot of LEED initiatives, is that it's, equipment doesn't always perform in real life as expected or as well, or it gets used a little differently than in its original intention. So the beauty of the Living Building Challenge is they're saying, look, we need to get to what is the net impact of what is happening in these buildings operationally. And so the ongoing monitoring is a big part of it, whether it's water, energy, even just ongoing health and air quality in the building as well. So that is a remarkably different element of it. And by the way, the organizers and drivers, champions, I guess I'd say, of that project feel that the cost to them is actually, the operational cost is going to be actually a lot less than a typical building, but the upfront cost was about 5 to 7% more. But they've been able to structure it away with some really good financing and modeling to make sure that it was affordable for them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, question primarily for Tom, but any of you might have thoughts on it. I certainly agree. Storage is really key to the next step. And right now, the storage that most people are looking at when we set up even a demonstration project like a small microgrid or something is typically the lithium ion. And I would just assume that lithium ion is not where we're going long term because it's nowhere near scalable. We should use lithium ion for electric cars and things like that where it's really valuable. We'll find other technologies which are hopefully right around the corner. But how do you see that transition happening as the utilities are getting used to working with this? I think that's all a good thing, and yet it's fundamentally not the right technology. How do we transition there?
Well, I'm not sure I totally agree with you that it's not fundamentally the right technology. For many different applications, lithium ion or any of the solid state batteries are better for footprint and for being able to move them around. So there are flow batteries out there, for instance, and there are some flow battery companies that do that. You have roughly 2 to 4 times the footprint to do that. It's not you can't move it around. But we'll see some of that at the utility scale, but there's so much development that's going on in the solid state battery realm, primarily in lithium ion and various different types of that I think we're going to see most of that being deployed for a while. Will that be the technology it ends up being 10, 20 years from now? Probably not, but it's going to be a good portion of it for now.
And just one other thing, distinction I want to make about storage. From our experience, is it's important to recognize that there's actually multiple benefits or value streams or applications with storage. A lot of people think of storage as backup power, right? Your grid goes down and you have storage there for an emergency. That's kind of a specialized technology for most of you. You may not be familiar with that, but it tends to be the old school lead acid batteries that that can be used for off-grid systems. Lithium ion can do some of that, but it's hard to get a big enough scale to make it cost effective. There's also this notion of load shifting. So when Tom had the duck curve, and you're producing solar during the day, but you don't want to discharge it during the day because it's not worth a lot, but it will be worth a lot if you discharge at night. So that's called load shifting. So there's another value stream there. And then the last one, the one's most relevant today for most larger businesses, is called kind of peak shaving or demand shaving, where you're dealing with KW, not KWH, which is your demand spikes, which you get charged at any time in the month for the maximum amount of energy you're using at any given time. And it's kind of like you're getting almost like charged for the size of the pipe that the utility has to kind of provide for you. So that can make some sense now with the right kinds of more industrial scale, large scale customers, economically. And some of these batteries can actually do all three of those things, but they're still kind of young as a technology and being able to do all of that really well, or to actually monetize it. So there's a lot of potential there, but it's not yet been totally unlocked for a lot of reasons.
Okay, let's take one more question, guys, sorry. But go ahead.
So we do a lot of EV work, and since the fires, many people we speak with say, oh, I'm concerned about getting an EV because what if it's low on its charge and the grid basically fails, and then I don't have enough miles on my EV to get somewhere. Which is interesting because before the Sonoma fires, we really didn't ever hear that question. And I'm wondering, from a storage perspective, what you would tell people, if they are in the financial position to invest in storage at their home in Marin. And I know that obviously gas stations also, if there's no power, you can't pump gas, but people have a different mentality around that.
That is a wonderful question, and it's they're starting to think about that up in Sonoma right now. I know PG&E's got a pilot program about wildfire resiliency where they're building solar storage plus EV infrastructure. Hopefully going to set it up in strategic places that if a wildfire does hit, then they'll be able to kind of coordinate and figure out how to route people towards there. Additionally, down in Fremont, there's a really interesting project at 3 fire stations where they're doing solar plus storage. They don't have EV infrastructure, but I think essentially the opportunity is there to use these kind of emergency services hubs as opportunities for cataclysmic events to be able to kind of route people towards there. Hopefully they have enough charge to get there to power their vehicle.
Right.
But if they're stuck at home, I mean, we certainly would encourage anybody to look at storage if they do have the financial resources and they feel like that's something that's important to them. And I think additionally, just to kind of backtrack on the question, we're really excited about, we had 2 RFOs, one for behind the meter energy storage as well as utility scale energy storage. And so we're going to be working with kind of a sample industrial customer where some energy storage providers are going to compete and bid and be able to kind of develop a solution for large industrial customers in our service area. So it's going to be able to help address that peak demand issues that a lot of major industrial customers deal with.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to take a quick break, and feel free to load up in refreshments, and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Thanks. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, I thought I'd, join these folks over here since they've been left out the whole time. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. So, Carleen, Cullen, I love that Chris says, in this beautiful space that they're 1 year in and cash flow positive, because I started a tech company in the 80s, and I can tell you we were in Spanish Harlem eating hot dogs for about 4 years and not cash flow positive. But anyway, that ended up well. We went public and eventually sold the company. So I moved to Marin about 10 years ago and started Cool the Earth. We are a volunteer organization. We've been doing behavior change work for starting with schools and families, getting them to take small actions to change their carbon footprint. And about a year ago, or a little less, with lithium-ion battery prices dropping so dramatically, we felt that now was the time to really engage people in EV driving. So we've launched into that. So I'm going to set myself a little timer so I know how much time I have. And we launched this new campaign called Drive Clean Marin. So our initial program that we ran for about a decade started here in Marin and ended up growing to an international program. We reached over 250,000 families, so about 500,000 people all in with their kids and their parents. And thought, you know, with EVs, let's come back to our home base where we all live and see if we can start to make some progress on the most important thing that we can all do to reduce our GHG, which is to drive electric. And if you don't drive electric yet, don't worry, you will. And you know, don't feel bad about that, but that's coming up. Oh, that's pointing to that. Is that too far away?
Kind of a side button.
Oh. See, when you get people who started tech companies, they can't use these sorts of things. The rise of electric cars, there are projections, and I'm going to talk a lot from the financial world. I was in New York City for 20 years, and being a public company, very, very, very well aware of how Wall Street really dictates a lot of what happens in the world in many different ways. And many, if not all, of the financial analysts will tell you that there's going to be price parity between the internal combustion engine vehicle and EVs by 2025, which is, you know, just this incredible change from where we were. We're talking about lithium-ion batteries. The prices have dropped precipitously, and that's really what's making this change. Hey, I got it. So Goldman Sachs, the EV boom, which is happening right now. So 32% is their projection of EVs, of all new vehicle sales will be EV by 2040. And let's see, also, the battery market, you can't read that probably, so I'll read it, $180 billion by 2040, up from $450 million. So very significant growth there. Bloomberg Financial News as well says there's EV revolution, 54% global sales by 2040. So these numbers are really, really significant. And I wanted to point out, and I'll get to some more detail about Marin, but looking at the overall market, lithium-ion battery prices are just plummeting. It's an amazing story. And you know, the whole EV world and the storage world is following more the tech model versus like in EVs versus the automobile model. So the prices are coming down dramatically. The efficiencies are doubling every year. And that's what's happening in this market. So, which is really important when we talk about this massive conversion. Governor Brown has called for 5 million EVs on the road by 2030. And you think, is that possible? Here we are in 2018, and you know, a large number of us don't yet even drive electric, even those in sustainability. So how's this going to happen? And it's going to be based on, you know, market economics. There we go. If you're not aware already, many countries around the world have announced bans for EVs, and all these new EVs are coming on board. There are currently 50 plug-in cars. Some of those are plug-in hybrids, which use a certain number of miles based on pure electric and then have a gas backup. Others are the cream of the crop, which are the pure battery cars. You know, Jaguar just announced this beautiful new I-Pace, high end of the market. You're gonna get 300 miles. I haven't been able to test drive it yet, but I'm about to. Not that I'm getting it. I have a Leaf, and my family have a Leaf and a Bolt. And we also are going to get the I3, because we have 4 drivers, so a lot of cars, but then we'll be fully electric. But there's every day, you can't keep up with the amount of announcements. But I want to point out that right now, people think of EVs as very high-end, luxury vehicles or expensive vehicles. And that is all changing. Right now, currently, there are 8 electric vehicles that are under $25,000. So they're no longer vehicles just for kind of for the wealthy, the way Tesla started out, but they're coming to, they're available and coming to mass market. And actually a used, so any of you who are employers who have employees coming from outside of the county, there are used vehicles. You can get a used Leaf for about $8,000. Buy it. It's incredible. You get a $500 rebate from PG&E when you buy a vehicle. So great rebate. Some of the pricing is just amazing. So there's great opportunities there. So in Marin County, we are very fortunate, as we had Supervisor Sears earlier speak, to have leadership around this issue. Drawdown Marin is just absolutely nothing short of groundbreaking. It's fantastic. The resolution, we're so excited to have that. As I mentioned, we have Governor Brown's orders as well for the electric vehicles. So where are we actually right now? We are at less than 2% of registered vehicles in the county are electric. So you look back and you think, wow, prices are down and lithium-ion battery prices are down and vehicles are coming in, and yet, the reality is we're still at 2%. And we have about 115 charging stations, public charging stations, to support those 4,000 vehicles. And if we're to get to 60,000 EVs by 2030, which is effectively Marin's commitment for Governor Brown's order, that's a 15-fold increase. So you can do the math. It's a little bit daunting about how many public charging stations we need. We also need at-work charging stations, at home. There's so many different markets that need to be supported, and this is a real need that we're looking at. I want to mention also, though, in addition to Drawdown and Governor Brown, that I helped lead with 3 other people Gavin Newsom's policy committee for his gubernatorial campaign for the transition to electric in the state. So we're trying to get very focused on what's happening here in Marin, but also looking at broad-scale policies and investments that will help carry the state forward as well. So Marin's a great place because we can test out some of these new things, and to say that if Gavin wins in November, which vote for him or not, I am obviously, but there will be significant investment expected from the state level as well. So let's take a look at practicalities of what do we need in terms of charging infrastructure, because the cars are coming, the prices are coming down. So if you are a resident single-family home, you will basically most likely charge almost all the time at home. Right, usually it's around 85 to 88% of your charging will be done at home. But you will need some public support as well from public charging stations, so that about 15% of the time when you're not charging at home, we need to have some public infrastructure. There's, for you, there are tax credits, rebates, a PG&E rebate, as I mentioned. The agencies in the county that we've identified, and I think a lot of people have identified as folks to help incubate, we're talking about incubate this market, would be MCE Clean Energy and the Transportation Authority of Marin. And I'll get back to that last category. Then we have in-commuters. We have a huge amount of in-commuters in the county who we need to help be able to come in, especially if they're in low-range electric vehicles or in plug-in hybrids that don't have a high electric range. This is kind of counterintuitive, but plug-in hybrids, which most analysts would say are going to be about 40 to 50% of the plug-in market. But we hope they're not. We hope it's lower than that, but that's where Wall Street is projecting. The more plug-in hybrids, if they have around 20, 25 miles range, you have to increase the number of charging stations, just at an order of magnitude about 2 to 3, because we don't want those folks driving around on gas. They need to be able to charge in at the streetlights. In Los Angeles, for instance, they have installed over 125 on their streetlights charging stations. So right along the curbside in lower income communities, here we go. Well, where are they going to charge if they don't have dedicated parking? It's going to be at work, it's going to be when they're on the road doing their errands, or it's going to be where they park. And as we convert our streetlights to LED, we have the extra amperage that we can take advantage of that. There's also curbside charging. So there's a lot of new and interesting things. Streetlight charging in Europe is widely deployed. So taking a look at that. In commuters, if you are at a company and you have a parking lot, I urge you to consider starting to invest in charging. Employees really love being able to come in and charge, and you could make that free, you could charge them the going rate, et cetera. We have multi-unit and renters who also are going to need charging support. And then ride-hail, delivery, and travelers. And as ride-hailing becomes more and more of a thing, they're going to be driving around. We don't want them driving around on gas. Happy drivers, happy employees. And workplace charging influences purchase of EVs. MCE has, JR's not here, but has a study that says if there's workplace charging, that employees are 20 times more likely to drive electric than if there's not. So it's a very significant number. And employees save money, at least $800 a year. So I don't want to say skip the raise, but don't do that. But that's a huge benefit. That's post-tax dollars. So that's anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. Plus you have a maintenance savings. So that's annual. It's a big number for folks.
Hey, Carleen, so
Yeah.
what about winter?
Okay. Total cost of ownership, I'll pass through that, but overall it's less expensive because maintenance is lower, fuel is lower. This is after incentive pricing. And then my favorite, when people drive electric, amazing things happen. They start to feel happy. They arrive at work just like happy. I mean, every time I get in my EV or my e-bike, I'm in a great mood. And that's, that culture at a workplace, happy employees, that's really, really important. That's something in a tight labor market to be considered. So wrapping up, we have this program that I say free for a limited time. We're a nonprofit, but and eventually we need to make back a few dollars for basic staffing. But we have a new program, brand new, that will come to your business, integrate with your workforce, do a little seminar, talk about the essentials of driving electric, give your employees and your managers test rides so they can actually figure out what it's like to be in an EV and help you figure out the financial and technical incentives of installing workplace charging. And that's it. And we put brochures on the table, so if you want to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carleen. All right. Spencer, you want to come on up? Load up some slides here.
Our next speaker, Spencer Crim, is with Chargepoint. Spencer works closely with commercial and industrial energy customers to help them gain the visibility to make more intelligent energy decisions and earn revenue with Chargepoint's grid operator program. Leverage automated analytics to meet reporting and compliance requirements and procure energy at the best price. Prior to Chargepoint, Spencer helped design and present customized solar PV systems for residential customers, provided financial analysis during in-home consultation to lower customers' electricity costs, and offer guidance and assistance throughout design, permitting, and installation processes. Spencer has a BA with honors from Colby College. There you go.
Thanks a lot. That's actually my bio for a different company that I used to work for. So that teaches me to keep my LinkedIn profile up to date. So what I do at Chargepoint actually is work with anybody with a parking lot to install a commercial level charging station. Chargepoint is the world's largest EV charging station network, which means that we sell hardware and to property owners who want to provide EV charging, and then the software and services for those property owners to connect to the EV drivers coming to their property. So that, real quickly, we are the provider for most of the municipalities here in Marin County. We have about 7,000 customers across the US and about 47,000 stations across the US and North America. We just received $125 million to go conquer Europe. Daimler was the leader of that funding round. That's enough about us. Apologies to, I am the regional account executive, meaning I cover Menlo Park to the border of Oregon. So I handle every commercial customer we have, and anybody who isn't a single family homeowner. And I'm about to transition to a national sales role. And of course I said in this transition time, because I work at a startup, I'm kind of doing both jobs. Why not just speak at a conference? So this is a little haphazard. Thankfully, Carleen already covered this in depth. EVs are here, more are coming. Here are a few of the examples that cars that are coming out. But the real point of this presentation is to discuss what it's like to be an EV driver and how it is for businesses, property owners, municipalities to support those drivers. The biggest difference as we make this transformation in transportation to electrification is the fueling mode. All of us with our gas cars, our old gas cars, we used to just drive wherever we wanted when it was close to E. We knew we had about 10 miles to get to a gas station. There's one on every block. So you just go a little bit off route and you add 10 minutes to your drive, and that's how you filled up. With electric vehicles, it's much more like your phone. For me, I plug in my phone wherever I can, in my car, at my desk. If I don't have my phone operating as a sales guy, I'm not working, so I need that. And similarly, EV drivers, you need to get where you're going. So you're gonna plug in wherever you can. So it's much more of a top-off model. You plug in at home, you plug in at work, you plug in at the store. And when you're doing out of town, you're gonna plug into some type of depot, which is gonna be an express charging station. So there are 3 levels of charging to support these types of charging. This is a little bit out of order. I'll go back. So there's 3 types of charging out there. Level 1 is your 110 outlet. You plug into the wall, you get about 3 miles of range per hour plugged into that wall. That's gonna take forever to get where you're going. So most everybody does level 2. That's gonna be about 25 miles of range. There's a universal standard for that connector. That's on every car except for a Tesla, but the Tesla comes with the adapter for that universal standard. But that's a 240 volt, or about a dryer circuit socket. And that's going to be applicable in most cases, except for that out-of-town driving, where you need to speed up your charging time significantly because you're trying to get to LA and your car only has 200 miles of range on the battery. So the DC fast charge is what's called as level 3, and that's anywhere from 24 kilowatts. And this is actually an older slide, but there are a lot of systems out there going up to 350 kilowatts, 400 kilowatts in an hour, which for a car is actually overkill based on the battery chemistry. But for buses, for the new electric semis, it's going to be key. And so there's some range there. So if we go back to the different types of places that you're going to be, basically, most of us are going to be looking at level 2 because of the cost of the infrastructure. when we're thinking about how to support EV drivers coming to our property, whether we're a municipality supporting employees, or we're a workplace, or we're a shopping center trying to attract the EV drivers and getting them to dwell at the shopping center longer. So it's mostly level 2 because of that charging time. That's kind of the sweet spot between investment and getting people there. So getting into that too, I wanted to talk about the economics of EV infrastructure, in that it's not going to be something that one of the biggest questions I get is, what's the ROI? When do we get enough drivers to come in that we've paid for this construction project where we run a 40 amp circuit through our parking lot to put a $3,000, $6,000 piece of equipment into the concrete, and now we're charging for electricity. The ROI is that you got that EV driver to come to your property, that you've got a happy employee who's excited to drive electric because electric cars are more fun, it's the right thing to do. You've got customers coming to your property and they're plugged in for longer. Target is a big customer that loves EV charging, because it increases the dwell time. Most people, when you go to Target, you're trying to get in and out, 15 minutes. If you're plugged in, you say, I can stick another 25 minutes maybe, get a few more miles, I can go pick up the kids from school, spend 25 more minutes in a Target, and you're gonna buy some more stuff. And so it's a real big, retail loves EV charging. The interesting thing about Target too is that they give away charging for the first hour because they want you to stay there for an hour. At an hour, they start charging a pretty expensive rate, because once you've spent more than an hour in Target, you're probably buying the whole store. So they've assumed that you've moved on to a different vendor, so they want to charge you. So now they know you're camping there and preventing new EV drivers from coming. I'll get to that in a second. But so the economics is really about getting people there, and you can cover your costs of electricity, but the investment is really about supporting EV driving by getting those people to come here and attracting EV drivers and retaining EV drivers. Tech companies love it because it's very competitive as a workplace benefit. Anything, it's about the snacks, when it's about getting that software programmer, it's about, do they get to plug in their car for free? Do they have valet parking? All of those things. And so when you think about EV drivers coming to your property, how do you support them? They want an easy station to use. They want to know that they can plug in. They might know there's a station there, but do they know if it's available? Are they able to know what the price is in advance? And then also, is that charging system going to communicate to them when a station is available or when your car is fully charged? These are all things that, because no one wants to sit in their car for 1 to 4 hours waiting for it to fill up, and they don't want to come out and check, go back, come out and check. There's a lot of advantages to a smart charger that will be able to communicate with the driver. So a couple of questions. These are questions that I ask anybody when we're starting a project. And it's, if you were to install stations, would you want them to be open to the public? You don't have to, it's not just a socket. So Carleen mentioned there's 115 public stations in Marin County. Chargepoint actually has over 400 commercial stations deployed in Marin County. Most of those are not open to the public because they are an employee benefit. So it's something to be mindful of, that there is a lot of, if you're making that investment for your employees, oftentimes those employers keep that private, but there's nuances to that too. Do you want to charge money to use the stations? Like I said, Target's a great example of free for a little bit, not free later. A lot of employers are providing it for free. A lot of employers are just passing that cost straight through. One thing to keep in mind is that the rule of thumb for the cost of electricity when you were comparing it to a gallon of gas equivalent is it's a factor of 10. So 10 cents a kilowatt hour is about $1 a gallon of gas. So if you think about your average rate being 25 cents a kilowatt hour, that's about a $2.50 gallon of gas. That's still cheaper than the going rate right now in California. So it's still an employee benefit, even though you're covering your costs. And so it's cheaper transportation for your employees. Also, do you want that fee to change over time? Target is a great example, but also when we're thinking about that shifting tariff schedule, do you want, if you're on A6 and you're paying 55 cents a kilowatt hour from 12 to 6 p.m. right now, you don't want to still be charging 25 cents, you're losing 30 cents a kilowatt hour on that. So being able to adjust with that, but also knowing, this is sort of related, do you want your stations to be able to adjust to grid signals, to be able to respond for demand response, or to their being able to cap the output of the station during those super expensive times, just to keep your overall facility expenses low. These are things to think about. Do you want the stations to be visible on a public charging map or a mobile app? This is very related to that first question, but lots of stations, all EV drivers have 1 or 2 or 3 apps to find chargers. It's built into a lot of inboard navigation systems now where the publicly available chargers are. So knowing if you want it to be visible, you're going to be able to determine who's coming to your corporate campus or who's coming onto the city hall to use those stations. And then the other question is more about how do you support your drivers if all the stations are filled up? Do you want to allow them to queue up in the next for the next available one? And all of these questions basically lead to the decision, or to the point that you do not really want a non-networked station. You don't want to just have a plug hanging out there that anybody can use, or that's something you have to padlock physically to prevent people from using. Lots of smart charger providers out there. Chargepoint is an exclusively, we do not provide a non-network station, but the point is all of these use case questions on how you want that charger to be used, you can manage that simply with software that's connected to a connected station. So typically, and this is my last slide, just being able to, the one thing, I've covered all of this, I think the big point is planning for growth. People underestimate the cost of the construction project. We're looking, County of Sonoma has really good data on this. It's somewhere between $6,000 and $20,000 per space to install a level 2 charger. They've deployed chargers all over the place, but so when you're planning for growth, if you're doing a solar installation, for instance, you're trenching your parking lot, lay a bunch of conduit, so all you have to, you don't have to redo that trenching. All you have to do is pull wire through that tube and plug a station in on top. And that's going to allow you to grow, as you guys all saw that massive exponential growth of EVs, so how you can support it. Thanks. It's hard to be brief on this because everybody's got a niche case, and but thanks so much.
Great. All right. You're getting little tips and little glimpses of some great technology and some great policy issues, and we're going to put all these slides up on the website on greenmarin.biz. We'll put the video up there also. Give us a few days, but or you can ask the speaker individually, for slides with your card. So.
Next speaker is Adam Stalker, survey researcher from the UC Berkeley Transportation Sustainability Research Center. Adam joined the TSRC after receiving an MS in Transportation Engineering from UC Berkeley in June 2015. His research topics include car sharing, ride sourcing, transportation network companies, microtransit, and alternative fuels. Prior to joining TSRC, he worked with the San Francisco County Transportation Authority in their modeling and travel forecasting division. He also has previous experience in roadway design and construction. He got his BS in civil engineering from UC Davis in 2012 and grew up in Santa Monica. Welcome.
Great. Yeah, thanks everybody for having me. I have to say I'm a little bit of a, okay, great. I have to say this is a little bit of a different conference that I usually speak at. This is the whole energy crowd, and I seem to be the sort of the transportation wonk here, the sole transportation wonk. So I'll try to hold it down for the transportation community here. Tough to do, but I'll try. So yeah, like I said, my name's Adam Stalker. I'm a researcher, been a researcher for a little over 2 years with the Transportation Sustainability Research Center. We're housed at the Institute of Transportation Studies, UC Berkeley. Yes, yes, I'll try to a little better. Cool. So what we do is we're a small research group on campus at UC Berkeley, and we study the travel behavior and the environmental impacts of shared mobility. Shared mobility kind of being a blanket term, and that. So today, my talk, Chris asked me to focus a little bit on suburban use cases of shared mobility, and then to talk about the coming convergence with automated vehicles and sharing, because as we know, shared mobility and automated vehicles has a lot of implications for the way that charging works, even just moving from a potential assumption that everyone is going to own their vehicle to maybe, not as many people own, their own personal vehicles, but they're accessing, mobility through a fleet, right? So that has implications all across the grid and charging as well. So I'm going to define a little bit of shared mobility, talk about some use cases in suburban environments, talk about the convergence of automated vehicles and shared mobility, and then go over some opportunities and challenges. So shared mobility is really a blanket term for many different types of modes of shared transportation that can be accessed by users, a group of users, on an as-needed basis. So this can be more traditional public transit services like bus and rail, but a lot of what we study at our center are the impacts of some of these new emerging services, things like car sharing, so that would be like your Zip car, your car to go, things like what we call ride sourcing, which is the definition that we call for transportation network companies, coined by my boss Susan Shaheen at UC Berkeley. These are companies like Uber and Lyft, which you guys are probably well aware of. Things like bike sharing as well, and shuttles like microtransit. I'll get into some of this here. So usually my talks center around shared mobility in urban environments, which makes sense, right? I mean, these services, are deployed in places with high density of demand, where these companies can, turn a profit. And in cities, dense cities that often sometimes have, large populations that don't own a vehicle or own, a low number of household vehicles. But, as I'm sure you guys are aware of, you see the news, especially ride sourcing services like Uber and Lyft are expanding very rapidly. And they're expanding to suburban and less dense environments as well. So I'm going to go over just some, some examples of things that are happening. They're mostly pilots at this point, around North America, around sort of these services in, less dense suburban places. So starting off with some ride sourcing pilots, these are companies like Uber and Lyft again. There's some pilots that have emerged in the sort of first last mile to transit space, so trying to encourage transit ridership in less dense areas by providing a link, a Lyft or an Uber ride as a link to a local transit station. So this is just one example in Centennial, Colorado. They partnered with Lyft to offer this first last mile service subsidized by the city. It was a 6-month pilot. It ended up closing due to low ridership, but they found that they were subsidizing a little under $5 a ride. And I know right now, TAM actually has a project with Lyft as well, a very similar one. I included this one though because that one is still in pilot phase. There aren't findings yet. One of the most interesting, I think, pilots in this space is Uber and Innisfil, Canada. This is a suburb of Toronto. So this suburb of Toronto, they didn't have any, existing public transit system, and they were looking into different proposals of, we want to maybe run a couple bus lines, running the numbers for that, seeing how much that might cost. And they ended up realizing it would actually be cheaper to just subsidize Uber rides within their city. So that's what they did. The pilot's been going for about 8 months now, I believe, and there's no hard findings yet, but there was a news push a little while ago that claimed that they're saving about $8 million per year compared to an equivalent level of bus service. So really interesting, definitely something to watch. So far they're subsidizing a little over $5 per passenger within those first 8 months. So that's sort of on the high end of the spectrum of traditional transit subsidies, but in a suburban environment is actually fairly similar to bus subsidies. So another kind of mode of transportation that's been, or shared mode that's been emerging in urban environments, but also some pilots in suburban environments as well, are microtransit. And really what microtransit is, it's just a fancy transportation walk word for shared van services. So these are typically services that you can hail with a smartphone, and you can think of them as sort of like a baby between an Uber and a traditional bus. So they run semi-fixed routes, but they can deviate based on real-time demand. So one example of this is Via in Arlington, Texas. It's a suburb of Dallas, or near Dallas. And the city had one bus line. They ended up canceling it recently and replacing it with this Via van service. And so it's a 12-month pilot, and it's a $3 flat rate per trip, and the city's subsidizing a bit over $300,000 per year for Via to run these services. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It sort of just started. We did a study with a company called Bridge in Kansas City, Missouri, so a kind of less dense, urban suburban type of area, and was a very similar service. Ran transit services with their on-demand vans to a few places that were not really well served by the existing bus network. And actually, I can tell you, as being sort of the lead researcher on this pilot absolutely flopped. The ridership was incredibly low, and it didn't continue after a year. And Bridge actually is now kind of a defunct company. So some of the findings that we found, like these projects are hard, and in less dense, more suburban type of environments, the demand just isn't there, and the vehicle ownership can often be very high. So you need to be very pinpointed on your routes and where you are running service to, and making sure that there's actual demand for that. And also marketing. Marketing is huge. For public agencies that sometimes take on a partnership role in these projects, they're not used to marketing like these private companies are. We found that a majority of the people who had signed up but not used the service didn't even know that there was a 10 free ride promo. So that's a huge misstep. And so just when you're implementing these programs, you really need to take the full spectrum of creating demand into consideration. And then really briefly, there's also carpooling platforms. So carpooling is great for the environment. Carpooling is always, always, always going to be a win on a greenhouse gas emission standpoint. Putting more butts in seats is always going to be good from a congestion standpoint, from a greenhouse gas emission standpoint. So here's just a couple example platforms. Waze has a carpool service, Cullen-based carpool, that if you're a driver and you have a commute, you can post your commute on their platform. If you're a rider, you can match with them and pay the federal 54 cents a mile and get that income. Scoop is another example, and they manage a similar platform but for workplaces and businesses. And they also have a partnership with BART that has guaranteed parking at 6 stations. So just some opportunities and challenges of suburban shared mobility. I think one big opportunity is you can potentially reduce, the cost of compared to traditional public transit services. People are still, like I said, ironing out the best practices of this, but I think that there's certainly some initial pilots that show that this could be possible. You can increase the vehicle occupancies, decrease, typically high existing single occupant vehicle load share, especially in suburban environments. You can improve, public transit ridership, increase the ridership, and potentially reduce greenhouse gas emissions, especially if those vehicles are, cleaner drivetrains. But there's certainly challenges. There's structural challenges, like I've mentioned. The low density that's typically found in suburban environments makes things like wait times much harder to achieve. And the high existing vehicle ownership rates, especially from a US perspective, makes these things hard as well. Because if you're used to, just travel behavior, right? If you're used to getting in your car, flipping it on and going, it's going to be pretty hard if you say, oh, you have to wait 10 minutes in the rain. So that's sort of a behavior change that's difficult. But what's on the horizon? I'd say what I was just talking about there was sort of the 5-year track. But if we're talking about 5, 10, 15, 20 years, automated vehicles are coming. Everyone has probably seen the news about this, and including some of the bad news lately coming out of Phoenix. But that they're coming, and they're improving every day. And the way that we see it, and I think a lot of people are sort of seeing it, is a lot of these trends are beginning to converge. So SECA is actually stands for Shared Electric, Connected, and Automated. This is a term that our friend Tim Papandreou, who was formerly at the SFMTA but is now at Waymo, which is Google's self-driving arm, coined a few years ago. We really think that a lot of these trends are going to come together. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but I think the biggest reason is that when vehicles no longer have a driver in them, the per mile cost of a transportation service can be lowered dramatically. Think about your Uber right now, or your current Lyft, or a taxi. About 80% of that money that you're paying them is going directly to the driver. If you take that out, take that driver out, the per mile cost comes way, way, way down, and you have the potential to offer incredibly cheap mobility as a service, absolutely competing with car ownership, absolutely competing with public transit, and definitely expanding into more areas than these services are available right now, including suburban and less dense areas. So I think that once automation is there and these services are there, and again, there are many, many companies rushing toward this, we will start to see these services really proliferate. But of course, there's opportunities and challenges with this as well. There's opportunities. You could increase vehicle occupancies. You could decrease household vehicle ownerships. A lot of people think that the case for electric vehicles is actually stronger with shared vehicles, because now, if these vehicles are driving over 50,000 miles a year, the upfront higher cost is actually better, over time, because the maintenance costs of electric vehicles are lower than fuel vehicles. So a lot of people think that these shared fleets will be, used with electric vehicles and not gasoline-powered vehicles, just from the economics alone. But of course, there's challenges as well. I think the potential for induced demand. If you think traffic is bad right now, imagine if you make travel cheaper, easier. You're going to induce a lot of demand for travel. Maybe that trip where you were going to go see your cousin, and if the traffic was too bad, you're going to make it, right? So it'll really depend how policy plays out here. So just some concluding thoughts. Shared mobility will, I think, continue to expand to less dense environments. Best practices are still developing, but I think we'll start to kind of solidify in the coming years. And it's important to take these findings from these pilots into account so you can apply them to new projects and studies. And AVs are coming, and we'll certainly have to craft policies around those to consider and mitigate for the potential negative effects on things like safety, congestion, and sprawl. And because I'm in a research center, I always have to end my talk with more research is needed, give us your money, right? And just last quick thing, if you want, we do a weekly newsletter every week called Last Week in Innovative Mobility. You can go to our page at imar.berkeley.edu and sign up at the bottom. It's kind of a highlight of 5 of the biggest news stories we do every week. And that's